All right, let's dive into something really interesting today. Germany. They're on this incredible journey, to completely transform how they get their energy. We're talking high tech, super ambitious, and really going all in on renewables.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? And one of the major players in this whole energy revolution is a company called Amprion. They're one of Germany's four main grid
Grid
operators.
operators. Okay, so like the folks who make sure the lights stay on, right?
Yeah.
Power lines, all that.
Exactly. But it gets much more interesting to see when you think about what Amprion's doing in this energy transition. Well, it goes way beyond just putting up power lines.
I was actually just on their website, Amprion Verbindet, and honestly, the menu alone felt like a peek into some kind of futuristic energy world. I mean, you've got innovation, European tasks, offshore. Definitely piqued my curiosity. What does it actually mean to be more than just a grid operator in this day and age?
Think of it this way. Germany's in the middle of this massive energy makeover, right? They call it the Energiewende.
Yeah,
Basically, they're phasing out nuclear and fossil fuels and rebuilding their entire energy system around renewable sources.
that's a tall order.
It really is.
Yeah.
And that's where Amprion comes in. They're not just maintaining the old system, they're actually building the infrastructure for this whole new energy landscape.
Wow, that's a much bigger job than I initially pictured.
For sure.
And speaking of big, three key messages are front and center on their website. Almost like they sum up Amprion's whole approach. First one is stark Geschäftsentwickler.
Strong business development, essentially.
So they're growing fast.
Rapidly. And it's being driven by these huge investment increases, partly because of the European Union's push for renewables and, well, the whole energy crisis after Ukraine. There's a lot riding on this, politically and economically.
So it's not just about going green. It's about energy independence, security, all of that.
Absolutely.
Which makes their second key message, Netzausbaubeschleunigung, even more interesting. They want to accelerate grid expansion, like they're in a race against time.
In a way, they are. Germany set some really ambitious climate goals. And to hit those targets, they need to get renewable energy sources up and running as fast as possible. But there's catch, right? Renewables, things like wind and solar, they're intermittent. The sun's not always shining, wind's not always blowing. You need a way to store that energy.
Okay, so that brings us to their third message, right? Grüner Wasserstoff, green hydrogen. I've heard rumblings about this, but how does it all connect?
So green hydrogen, it's made using renewable energy, which makes it a clean energy carrier, almost like bottling up extra wind or solar power. Amprion's investing heavily in this thing called power-to-gas technology. It essentially uses excess electricity to make hydrogen.
Wow, so instead of that extra wind power going to waste, they can store it as green hydrogen and use it later.
Precisely. It's a crucial piece of the puzzle if you want to create a truly climate-neutral energy system. And it really shows how Amprion's role goes beyond just moving electricity from point A to point B. They're shaping how that energy is generated, stored, and used.
It's less like they're building a grid and more like they're building a whole energy ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly.
And speaking of building, their website has entire sections dedicated to offshore and Netzausbau, that's grid expansion, right?
Right.
This is where those big infrastructure projects you mentioned come in.
Exactly. We're talking about these almost sci-fi sounding projects connecting massive offshore wind farms in the North Sea to the mainland. Feats of engineering on a scale we haven't seen before.
Offshore wind farms. I mean, it's hard to wrap my head around the sheer scale of it all. We're not just talking about a few turbines here, right?
Oh, not even close. Amprion highlights these projects, Baldwin 1, Baldwin 2, Baldwin 4, Baldwin 4, each one connecting these huge wind farms way out in the North Sea. It's like they're building cities on the water, generating just incredible amounts of electricity.
It's mind-boggling. How do you even go about getting all that power back to shore?
That's where the real engineering magic happens. They lay down these high-voltage, direct current cables, basically, underwater power lines, stretching hundreds of kilometers along the seabed. It's a massive undertaking with some serious technical hurdles.
I can only imagine. So once that energy actually gets to land, that's where those energy superhighways, as you called them, come into play, right? The A-Nord and Corridor B projects.
Yeah, you got it. Think of them as the interstate system for this whole new energy age. These massive power corridors moving energy from those coastal landing points all the way down to the industrial centers in the south.
So instead of pipelines carrying oil and gas, it's these tower lines carrying clean energy. It's a whole different world.
Yeah.
We've been talking a lot about the big picture, though. What does Amprion's work actually look like on the ground, day to day? They have this whole section on their site about recent news and press releases.
It's easy to get caught up in the big vision and forget about all the intricate work that goes on behind the scenes, right?
Totally. Like, I saw this press release about a new 380 kilovolt power line. It's planned between Westerkappeln and Vern. I'll admit, power lines don't usually get me too excited, but 380 kilovolts sounds pretty intense.
Oh, it is. Think of it this way. Most of our household outlets, they're around 120 volts, these lines. They're built to carry massive amounts of electricity over long distances. We're not talking about your average power cord here.
Okay, wow. So those superhighways we talked about, they're made up of these seriously heavy-duty lines. There was also a press release about Amprion upgrading a substation in Weisweiler. They even mentioned increased construction traffic, which made me realize this transition isn't just happening in some far-off wind farm, it's impacting communities, our roads.
It's easy to forget about the day-to-day realities, right? Amprion isn't just laying new cables, they're upgrading existing infrastructure, optimizing the entire system, piece by piece. And all that requires planning, coordination, and, yeah, sometimes a bit of construction traffic.
And it doesn't happen overnight either. Another press release talked about the permitting process just starting for a brand new power line. This one's between Hessen and Bayern. Seems like just the beginning of a long road.
Absolutely. You're looking at years of planning, public consultations, environmental impact studies. Building this new energy future takes more than just engineering. It takes collaboration, public support, and navigating all sorts of regulations.
It really underscores the long-term thinking behind it all. They're not just trying to meet today's energy needs, they're creating a system that's sustainable for generations.
And that's where things get really interesting, because as Germany pushes forward with this energy transition, it makes you wonder, what happens when other countries need to make a similar shift?
It's like Germany is writing the playbook for a renewable energy future, right?
Yeah, figuring out what works and what doesn't in real time.
Exactly. What it really takes to pull off this massive of a transition.
And maybe the biggest takeaway so far is this. It's not just about building new stuff. It's about designing a system that can adapt.
Adapt how?
Well, think about it. Energy technology is constantly evolving. What we need today might be totally different in 10, 20 years. And Amprion seems to get that. They're not building a grid just for today's renewables. They're building it to handle whatever comes next. New energy storage solutions, smart grid technology, even things we haven't even imagined yet.
So it's not just about keeping the lights on right now. It's about laying the foundation for a future that's powered by clean energy in a way that can actually evolve. As someone who likes to look ahead, I gotta say that's pretty exciting.
And what's even more exciting, Germany's experience with Amprion. Well, it could be a model for other countries looking to make that same transition. Imagine if this knowledge, this expertise, was shared globally.
It feels like we're watching a turning point, not just for energy, but for global cooperation, for the planet. And Amprion's right there, leading the charge, showing everyone what's possible.
It's really a story of innovation, determination, proof that humans can tackle these massive challenges if we set our minds to it. And yeah, the road ahead will have its bumps, but Amprion's work, it offers a real sense of hope, a glimpse of a future where turning on your lights means tapping into this clean, sustainable energy grid.
Well said. From those giant wind farms off the coast to these high-voltage power lines crisscrossing the country, Amprion's proving that a renewable energy future isn't just some far-off dream, it's becoming reality. One power line, one substation, one innovation at a time.
It really makes you think. Sometimes the biggest changes begin with a simple question. What if? And in this case, it seems like the answer is a resounding, let's build it.
It really does. Well, on that note, we'll leave you to ponder the possibilities. This deep dive may be over, but the conversation about our energy future is just getting started.